Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the Thrival Mode podcast, a space where I have the honor of showcasing inspiring women who have gone from survival mode to thrival mode, overcoming chronic illness, finding their femininity, and healing from traumas. I'm your host, Marissa Arnone, founder of Thrival Mode, where I have the absolute privilege of blending everything I'm passionate about to bring you a space where you can grow, heal, and connect in community. I'm a registered dietitian, dance instructor, and retreat facilitator. Last week, I sat down with Temima Shames, a seven-figure business owner and founder of Next Step Talent, a management firm for online creators to expand their reach and impact. Her and I met back in 2020, right before she started Next Step Talent, and we had followed each other online for about 5 years until we reconnected, as we often do. And I had reached out because I noticed that she was becoming more vocal about her journey with PCOS and finding balance in her role. I am so excited for you to hear her story. And I think this is the best possible first episode back since the big rebrand. If you find value in this episode, please give it 5 stars wherever you're listening to this, or like and comment what you found most impactful or relatable if you're on YouTube. Lastly, if you want to experience Thrival Mode for yourself, I highly recommend joining our online school community. Don't be a stranger. I'm here to support you in every step of your journey through our community group chat and the thousands of dollars worth of education, helping you deepen your understanding of nervous system regulation, nutrition, functional breathing, and so much more. All for just $10 a month. I am looking forward to seeing you inside, and I hope you enjoy this episode. I don't actually know too much about your story, which is why I'm so excited today, because you had posted an Instagram reel about a little bit of your story battling PCOS and finding the healthy balance between your masculine and feminine energy in business. And you were just preaching to the choir. When I listened to your video, it resonated with me so much that I was like, oh my gosh, I really want to learn more about your story and dive into that. But feel free to give a brief introduction first and tell everyone a little bit more about you.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I actually haven't done any podcasts on purpose since I started to share my story online, because I really want to be intentional about who I share it with and how I go about sharing it. And you felt like just your audience resonates a lot and like what you talk about. So I'm really excited to share more of it here. But yeah, I started Next Step Talent when I was 21, straight out of college. Um, I grew up in a household where I've been working since I was 10, and I was always in fight or flight. Like I had to figure out right after college how I was going to make money to live. And in the moment, I didn't realize the impact it was having on me, because when you're in fight or flight, your body's excited, but it's a false kind of excitement. So you're in this, like, it's as if you just went skydiving. So you have this like energy, and it's funny because in business, everyone used to say, like, I love your energy. And it really came from a really unhealthy place within my body that at the time just didn't understand yet. And so as I'm running this business and I'm ramping it up and I am enjoying what I'm doing as I'm doing it, all these physical symptoms started to like unravel themselves. And all of a sudden I'm noticing I gained like a ton of weight, even though I wasn't doing anything that I wasn't doing before. So it was nothing different. And so I started to go on this inner journey of like, okay, what's going on here? And I never had time to really process my childhood because, like I said, I went from, work, like school to work to doing this. And I started to say, okay, I need to like go within. And eventually my body said, you have no choice. So go, you have to do that work. And so that's when I made a lot of big pivots in my life and started to go down this addictive rabbit hole of learning about the body and learning about the mind. And I've always been into psychology. So then I got super into psychology, not just for myself, but for other people. And I'm really excited to be able to bring this experience outward, but I didn't feel like I could share it until I was at a place, because when you run a business, there's so many people that rely on you. So if they feel that you're unstable in any way, which is the immediate thought process when someone says they're working on themselves, it creates a panic in the United States for some reason. Everywhere else, maybe not. But anyways, that's my quick rant of a journey.
Love it. Thank you for the beautifully said Spark Notes version. Now we're really going to get into it because one of the first questions I wanted to ask you was about your upbringing and your childhood, your family dynamic. And you hinted at it a little bit that you've been working since you were 10 years old. I've been working since I was 10 as well. My mom put me to work as soon as possible. So I'm curious to hear a little bit more about that on your end.
Well, first off, I'll start out by saying I'm grateful for my upbringing for the sense that it taught me a lot about myself. And while some days, like maybe even last night, I like have these breakdowns where and I'm just going to be honest, right? Where I'm like, okay, why did I have this happen? But then I come back to like, okay, what is this teaching me and how can I help people that maybe didn't have my situation, find the motivation in themselves to start something? Because when you do start working when you're 10, you have this innate drive for some reason. And not everyone has that, but they do have it within themselves. They just have to find it. So growing up, my parents are divorced. I'll like spare too much of the details, but my mom was very much so in her masculine energy. She never took care of herself. She still doesn't, and I love her to death, but she does not take care of herself. And so I didn't grow up with a feminine figure who could teach me about how to care for myself, my body, and really like how to be a woman in society, which is something so funny that nobody talks about, is one of the biggest roles. And I'm excited to do that when I become a mom. But like one of the biggest roles of being a mom is not talking, but leading by example of how you carry yourself, and how you care for yourself is such a big portion of that, from what you put into your body to your exercise to even just like the little self-care items that you prioritize or how you allow others to treat you. And all of that for my mom was a very masculine energy. She allowed people to like walk all over her. And those are very, when you're in your masculine energy and you can't transfer, which we can go more into at a different time, you have this, it's hard to care for yourself. So I don't blame her for that. But I grew up with me not having that role model, and so what I found is like I was very competitive with my friends, and I was very in like an un just in not in like a fun way, but not in like a sports way. I was very competitive with people because that's the business fight or flight, right? You have to like do whatever you can to live. I always wanted to be busy. I always had to like not sit with myself. So that's that. I have twin siblings. Both all sides of my family. I'm not going to go into like who, but we have a lot of bipolar, some schizophrenia in my family, in my pretty immediate family. So I grew up around people who weren't quite stable, and so I felt like I had to provide that stable base. And again, I'm very grateful, but it wasn't the most stable household. I just moved for the 14th time in my life, so lots of moving around, and yeah, just overall instability is the best way to put it. So instability became something comfortable to me, and now I'm trying to actually revert that. So not allow myself to find comfort in grounding versus the opposite.
Yeah. How did the relationship that you had with your mother shape, because you alluded to competitiveness with your friends, how did that translate to trying to foster close, genuine female friendships?
I'm gonna be honest, it was really hard. And again, in hindsight, I would get defensive, and I didn't understand how my energy impacted a friendship at the time. Really until a few years ago when I started to understand the masculine feminine energy dynamics. That's when I started to understand, like, okay, I understand why my friends would call me competitive in like a negative connotation, or I understand why they would call me bossy when I thought that that was a good thing, because that is what drove my business. I'm not going to say it's a bad thing, but it was hard to then develop really authentic friendships, and I do have amazing humans in my life, but I do find that I gravitated toward women that were more in their masculine energy,
Yeah.
which is good, but it's something that I've come to want to expand on and work on in the last few years.
What spurred this moment of wanting to figure this out, especially the masculine feminine dynamic? Was there like a certain breaking point that happened, or was it more of a slow
It's actually like
progression?
hard to say. I don't think there was one moment. I so started reading a lot of books on it and spirituality about 3, 4 years ago. And then it wasn't until I made a really spontaneous decision to buy a house in Colorado, like incredibly spontaneous. But prior to the spontaneous decision, my hair was falling out. I had gained a ton of weight. I was working out and eating health, but like, so like I couldn't understand why these things were happening to me. My nails were really brittle, and there was just a lot of physical symptoms that my body needed some change. And I think the spontaneous decision like had no thoughts behind it. There was no like I need to do this because of X, but in hindsight, it was really like my body and my brain telling me that I needed to kind of move out of the environment I was in to do some of that inner work. And it was the best decision I ever made. Um, but I also have a really great partner in my life who helped to show me some of the parts of my masculine energy and really be upfront with me about them. And because I had such a safe space, I felt less um I just got less defensive about it. And it allowed me to really see things. And then I was like, oh my goodness, okay, like one friend said this one time and this other thing said this one time. And instead, and like the truth is we all get upset when people say negative things about us, but most of the time there's some truth if there's a repetition to it.
Yeah.
And that like it's kind of a mirror of what you don't want to hear, which is why you get defensive. And so when I allowed that wall down to actually look at the patterns of myself and say, why would I want to continue these? Or to determine if those were patterns I enjoyed or they suited me, and if not, let them go.
It's amazing how I feel like it is quite a unique experience to grow up in such a an unstable environment in the sense that it pushes you to become that rock for everybody. It was like with my situation, my mother was in a very flighty headspace, had a lot of anxiety, and she was a serial entrepreneur in the sense that she would build a business and then she'd get it to the point where every single one of her businesses could have been multi-million dollars. One of them hit, I think, 1.2 million back when I was a baby, but then there was a lot along the way. She had a lot of different businesses. She would get them profitable and then wouldn't hire a team, wouldn't delegate, and end up so burnt out. She would lose her spark for that specific business, burnout, and then would start something new. She'd like chase that dopamine, that excitement of constantly starting something new. And I realized that as much as I thought I had learned from that habit or that pattern that she had, I have done the same thing probably up until this year. So I actually find it very fascinating that you at 21, I want to hear that story, how you created Next Step Talent, saw that opportunity, ran with it, and actually stuck with one thing, because we can be in an unstable environment. And you said the instability is comfortable, but at the same time, you built a sustainable business. I mean, it's 2025, so that's incredible.
I'm actually gonna debunk everything you just said because that's what it looks like on the outside.
Okay,
So I'm gonna debunk everything you just said, but I really appreciate
love
the words and the truth of the matter is I do the exact same thing that you said, where I
Okay.
get bored after 2 or 3 years because I'm used to fight or flight. So my body's like, this is boring. Now, and that is where I made some bad decisions because um I understood that part of myself and I was trying to debunk it. So I'll go back to the beginning. I started my company. I was working at Visionary Records, which I believe is where we met way back when. I don't remember, but anyways, I was doing influencer marketing and they suggest that I start my company. Now, if I have one piece of advice for anybody, it's stop planning. And this is the only part of my feminine energy that I actually tap into is I do not plan ever. And maybe I plan in relationships I do and like maybe in other areas of my life, but I do not plan in the business area. I just go with what feels right. And that's been good and bad. And so I built up the business very quickly. And in about 20, around the same time when maybe like 6 months before I ended up on this inward journey, I was bored. And I had a great team, and I let some people on my team who don't run on instability help guide the direction of the business because I was aware that I am a very spontaneous person. So I didn't want to make too many spontaneous decisions. So I allowed some other people to make decisions, even if they went against my gut, because I was saying, okay, maybe my gut is telling me something that's not correct based on my childhood. And this is where I wish I never did that because what I learned is that when I don't trust my gut, I'm not able to not trust my gut, or at least at the time, not trust my gut and put my 100% forward. So I lost my spark as an entrepreneur and my spark as a leader that people believed in. And all my employees would tell me this. And again, this is all behind the scenes because
Yeah.
we got ourselves into some pretty big financial struggles during this time because I trusted people. And not to say that their decisions couldn't have been right, but with them making the decisions and me not being fully in it, it created a bad dynamic. And so the business really struggled. And this is something that I wasn't able to explain at the time because again, the fear of employees feeling unstable before. And so, I want to be someone who could speak about things as they happen, but the reality is there's a lot of stakes on the table before you're 100% certain of what is what. And so I am obviously still doing what I'm doing, but um, but there is that element of once I let go of those types of people and I retrusted my gut, things did pivot. And I am pivoting and I'm excited to pivot in various areas that like resonate with more with me. And the way I'm seeing it is like there's a difference between giving up on a business when it becomes boring and you changing as a person and properly wanting to exit and do something else. And there's that fine line in understanding. And, some of the parts of our childhood, good or bad, like the wanting to reinvent yourself, I think it can be beneficial in ways.
Mhm.
But also it can also affect like you growing up in that constant cycle is a hard thing to figure out for yourself of like why you're quitting something. Like, are you quitting because it's the right thing, or are you quitting because your mind is bored? You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw that it's a hard age as well. So we're battling the masculine feminine dynamic in business. We're also battling the early to mid 20s, doing that at the same time when there's so many expectations as it is. You're trying to find yourself, your identity, really what you stand for and what you're most passionate about in life and what your purpose really is while owning and operating a business. And it is so cool that you're able to speak on this now. And everybody has their perception of what you do or what I do and can say just based off of what they see online, like, oh, she does this, she's so successful, she has everything because of that fight or flight. And just some people have the drive and some people don't. But I think I want to dive into the balance, how you've been able to really manage the masculine, the feminine together in operating a business. I want to hear more about your partner and how they play a role in that too, to kind of bring that sense of stability and like really just that journey through the past few years and how it's gone since.
To be clear for anyone listening, I'm talking about my romantic partner, not my not a business partner. So those I run the business on my own. But I balancing it's difficult. And
Mm-hmm.
will I say it's something that you figure out entirely? No. It is something that you have to figure out on a day-to-day basis. And you have to constantly be self-aware of how your energy feels. And that's something that requires slowing down. And one of the things that I've done to balance it is set more boundaries because a very feminine energy trait that somebody who grew up in the masculine does not understand is boundaries. And I never knew what that meant because
Yeah.
it doesn't mean not being there for people. And I always confuse those two things. But it
Mm-hmm.
means also being firm on what you need. So if you say you're going to eat lunch and then your client calls, being like, I know I'm going to eat lunch right now and then I'll talk to you versus talking to them. So it doesn't mean not being there for them. And something that I learned is that people respect you more. So it seems silly, but for those listening that grew up in their masculine, that isn't something silly. And it's something that I catch myself doing. So it's not, it's a rewiring of your brain. So it takes a minute and I've gotten better at it. But one of the things is also just accepting that I am a girl and I want to be a girl in a girl's body when I'm in business. And I do lead with my emotions. And you know what? I'm accepting that. Is that the best for a business at all times? Is it going to make my business $1 billion? No. But do I want to put myself in a position where my body is going to shut down after like I was getting sick every other week because if I would fire someone, I was so much of my masculine energy that 3 days later my body would physically like I would get a fever and be like physically sick. And so I just made a decision as like not to say I can't fire people, but I would rather have a smaller team. I would rather have a team of people who I feel strongly about. I would rather not build a massive empire at the expense of maybe not being able to get pregnant because that's what it was coming to, right? And
Yeah.
so I just decided that the things like my body was more important and I have a lot of people who supported me, a lot of girls that felt like they were learning from me, and that I was like, that's a beautiful thing. Why do I need to try to compete with other people in the workplace? Or why do I need to try to prove, like, what am I trying to prove? There was nothing. And so, yeah, just coming back to like, I literally just saw a thing Mr. Beast posted where he was like, there's a reason that not a lot of people do what I do because you need to not care about your mental health. And I think what it came to is understanding men and women being different. And I'm talking about energy, gender, whatever, but making sure that you understand your body and your goals. Because one of the things that I'm noticing is like, there's all these 21-year-olds like me, and thankfully I noticed it, but I was on the road to being not able to have children because I was really pushing my body too far in one direction. And the testosterone, like, really what it is high testosterone levels, which creates a massive problem internally. And so I just want to help educate people. And again, the balance is not, it's really a day-to-day conscious decision of do I need to be more productive today? And if I do, what can I do at night or the next day to rebalance my body? Because if you're not spending that 50-50, if you're 75% in the masculine, your testosterone is boosted and it doesn't take 5 minutes to get it down. So a simple night meditation will not do it. You have to
Yeah.
give it a day or so. So maybe it's if I know I have a crazy work week, it's like that next weekend, I'm gonna give myself 4 days to get back into my feminine. And that means like for like letting people do things for you and saying no and all of the different things. Um, because you're acknowledging the impact it has on your body. And I try not to go a week of doing that, but we're all human and we do have running a business, like you do have to understand that sometimes you do need to be in that masculine energy, but how can you use your feelings? How can you be in your body and not too much in your mind? If you catch yourself overthinking too much, how can you bring it back? Um, really is like a constant push-pull though.
Yeah, it is a dance. I think you put that in one of your captions recently. Like the dance between the masculine and the feminine. Once you get in the groove though, it so much happens in your personal life and in your business life. And I really finally started to understand that this year because I got help. Like because of how I grew up, I didn't want to be a burden to anybody. I wanted to take on everything because I saw everything around me up in a whirlwind.
Yeah.
So that impacted how I started doing things as a young adult. It impacted the types of relationships I chose. I wanted to be the business owner. I wanted to be the breadwinner. I would have a trophy husband. Like that was my mindset because I was like, no, don't worry. I got it. Just like cuddle me at night and I'll be happy. But after a while of that, I realized how burnt out and unfulfilled I was. It also made a difference in just the way that I operated in my business because I wouldn't let go of the reins. I wouldn't hire people. I wouldn't delegate to anybody but myself. I thought, okay, this is because I saw my mom do this and I'm thankful that she had my dad to assist. So they did have a partnership in that way. But I saw myself as just really being alone in this. I was like, there's nobody else that has my brain or my vision and what I see fit for what I want to be doing. So I'm just going to take on the role of being the dietitian, the personal trainer at the time, now dance instructor, the marketing and messaging on social media, everything that encompasses a business, but that's literally impossible. Like if you want to make a true impact, I just didn't know how to have community. I didn't feel like I had that. I always felt like I was gonna be destined to be hyper independent my entire life with everything. And finally realizing like I can drop the weight, I can rely on people. I've had now work stay volunteers assisting me in my business this year for just a month, not even at this point, and it has changed my life. So how did your upbringing, are you resonating with the not being able to rely on people, and how did that impact you growing a team and then making things sustainable in that way?
So, well, first of all, I'm like that gave me full body chills, and I'm so glad that you like were able to bring somebody on and you're seeing that impact. And what you said about the relationship thing really resonated with me because when you're in your masculine energy, it carries into your relationship life without you realizing it. You like want to compete for a man. Like that's so why? Like and I joke now because I'm like, why wouldn't I want princess treatment? Like what could like why don't I like you want to carry my skis? Have fun. Like why wouldn't like and so when like we're in this era of like women being like, I could do it myself and like I don't need you and like blah 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 blah. And I'm like, I got to this point where I'm like, but like I don't need you, but like why why wouldn't I want that? If you want to cook me dinner, like sure. You know? Like let me sit back, put my feet up, get a massage. Like I don't, and so but in the moment, like looking back, I'm saying this, but like I had multiple relationships where I was like that. And then what I would find is I would get bored after because it was like the accomplishment. And all that is masculine energy. And really, I had to overcome that. I had to just like be like, okay, being in a stable, comfortable relationship is a good thing and like enjoy receiving. And all of a sudden you do that and you're like, wow, this is just a new feeling. And it's weird. It's awkward. You might not like it at first. But yeah, all of that like resonates so much with me. And in my business and scaling, I also very much have struggled because I was an independent person. And even when I brought on a team, I actually like still operated independently and had them like I would lead, but I was like half leading. Like I wasn't leading and delegating. I was, which is hard in management, so I give myself that. It's a little bit of a different situation.
Yeah.
But I do find that I'm right now where I'm at is that I have a lot of people that like clientele that have been with me for a long time. And so it's kind of hard to transition your personality while you have people who have known you forever. And that's been a big struggle is like them understanding the journey and the new sides of me that I'm very proud of. Um, but from my employee perspective, I'm really hoping in the next year to be just working on allowing people to receive and giving them more and just being better at um leading from my feminine energy, which I think I've always led from it from like an inspiring perspective, like helping them see the vision, but less from an actual day-to-day task perspective. But I've always been bad at giving like very specific, strict tasks. So maybe that is more feminine. I don't know. Um, but yeah, I think like again, the dance is a constant thing. And I think relationships and friendships are where the negatives of us being in business showed up the most and where I have really worked to make the most change, I think.
That alone, just the relationship aspect, relationships, friendships, what have you, was transformational for me. It was such a slow, interesting progression of like these internal discoveries of re I guess unlearning, not relearning. I just completely had to unlearn the way that I thought about life, because it's funny when you're 19, 20, 21, I'd say you think you know everything. I thought I knew everything about the world, and I was overly confident in that. I was in a multi-level marketing company from age 18 to 20, and I was here thinking like, I'm gonna make $1 million. I'm gonna be the youngest millionaire in the company. I'm gonna work myself into the ground in college. It doesn't matter. I'm gonna be a six-figure earner by the time I graduate college, and da da da. Like everything was so money centric, and I like how you realize that it's not about the money. It is about your well-being and your impact, and you can make a stronger impact when you're taking care of yourself. It doesn't have to be $1 billion corporation with hundreds of employees. And I think that's where a release happened for me as well, was like, I just want enough as far as what I need. And I have a beautiful home. I also purchased my first home in 2023. Pretty spontaneous. I don't know, kind of planned, kind of not. I have my beautiful gigantic Great Dane sitting right next to me. Like, I'm content. I have everything that I truly need. But I just had this skewed vision just based off of what the world says you need, which is wealth. And again, wealth is not a bad thing, but I think we can take it too far and idolize it in a way that we sacrifice our own well-being, our mental health. And our mental health is everything. So what are some other practices? I know we talked about boundaries, but is there anything else that really helps you when you're feeling like you're really in your masculine, but you want to pull back to get you to that place?
There's like physical things and then mental things.
Mm-hmm.
The physical things are obviously going on a run, getting those endorphins up, or Stairmaster or Pilates or something, but trying to break that sweat and get those endorphins up. That's number one. Number two for me is my supplements have been so helpful for me because what happens, what I didn't realize is when your testosterone raises, your collagen goes down. And so that's why your hair falls out. That's why your nails break. That's why all of these crazy things. I had eczema, like it's just like all these physical
Yep.
things here. And so if I notice that I've been too much of my masculine, like this week, for example, I pretty much like up the dose or double the dose of collagen per day. So, I'll have an extra matcha. Like I'm not just taking supplements. Like I'll have an extra matcha, maybe one more scoop of bone broth, or I use Armra. So I would like do one more scoop of that just to give my body a little bit extra because I'm acknowledging like, okay, I know my testosterone was up. I know my cortisol's up. I know that's going to increase inflammation. So let me try to like combat that. And usually it works. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I get sick if I was too unbalanced. But just being cognizant of the balance and what I can do, making sure like those days I'm not drinking less water because another thing is when your testosterone goes up, you often like have less desire to drink water for whatever reason. So I feel like for people, and I've noticed this is like, I'm like, okay, let me force myself to make
Mhm.
sure that I'm just eating healthier. Otherwise, we're going to end up with a fever, and I don't think we want that. So, or some sort of
Yep.
cold, sickness, whatever. So, that's the physical, like,
Yep.
things that I do. And then from like a mental perspective, I think it's like what a lot of people say, like no phone before bed and then, meditate or read a book or do something with your hands, like a craft. I've been really bad at that, but I love painting, so I need to be better.
Yep.
But it's hard, when you're so much in your masculine, it's really hard to sit down and focus on like a creative thing. Like I find I have
Yep.
like no juices and I'm like, okay, what's next? So it does take a few days to get back into like, okay, I can actually enjoy this without feeling like I need to be elsewhere.
Makes so much sense. That was my indicator, has always been how creative my mind is in a given moment. If I can get in my studio and choreograph, I know I'm doing something right. But there will be times where, like, I had gone maybe 6 months or something crazy, not doing that, which I love to do so much, and just having ideas flowing. It's funny because we try to push into our masculine so much in our business, but that stifles creativity in a way. So then when we can release that, our creativity flows, which helps our business thrive. So it's
Yeah.
like that is a beautiful part of it, and I really appreciate it. But I also know, like, when I'm in my masculine, I'm not crying, but I like to cry sometimes. Like, it really is such a beautiful release of emotions, and I need that. And I haven't cried recently. It's been like a month. And I'm like, wait, I don't want to cry.
No, you have to like not force it, but that's like the biggest indicator for me because I didn't cry my whole
Yep.
childhood, which I feel like you relate to because I just can tell. And I didn't like I like it was like my grandma's funeral and I was like joking that like I don't cry and like that should have been a red flag for somebody, but it wasn't. Um but the truth is like crying is the biggest indicator of your testosterone levels and your masculine energy. Like the biggest indicator of if you've been too much in one direction is like if you're feeling like you want to cry, can you actually cry? Like,
And just something to note for anybody who's listening, who you're hearing these terms masculine and feminine energy, and sometimes it can be hard to, it's not tangible. So it's really truly an internal and individualistic feeling, like something that makes Temima feel more masculine versus feminine might be different for me or someone else. And also, we have to factor in cycle regularity. I could give you tangible tips based off of a regular cycle where, yes, your testosterone is going to be higher naturally when you get closer to ovulation, and then your progesterone is going to increase closer to when you bleed, and that's when you can really get into your feminine more because your progesterone is your calming hormone. And I love that part of it, the scientific aspect. but I also want to be aware that there are a lot of women struggling with irregular cycles or really have never experienced a regular cycle before. So it's hard to say, but I can tell now that when I am out of my bleed, getting into my follicular and my ovulation, that is when I thrive in my masculine versus having that balance of the 2 weeks usually leading up to my period. It's when I do want to soften more. And that's how our bodies were designed. It's so beautiful. So if we can soften, have these physical and mental practices like you talked about that get you back into that balance, that's where that comes out and that's where that dance can really happen. So I don't know if you have anything to speak to on that.
I was gonna say we're in this weird time because women fought so hard to be equal to men. And I really hate that word.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I'm an entrepreneur and you all know that, and so are you. So I'm speaking from this from a perspective of I want women to thrive and I want them to reach any potential that they want to reach, whatever that is. However, I also think we're in this time where women wanted to compete so hard to be men in the workplace that we kind of did something bad for us in a way because then you get to the top and I've never met like a massive female CEO that's not struggling with her body, maybe not getting her period on time because we are trying to work on their 24-hour cycle because that's how these corporate businesses were built.
Yeah.
The truth is that our bodies do not work like that. Like if women came to work like a half day, 2 day, I'm just making something up, but like a half of a day on like the 2 weeks that were creative and slower and all we did was creativity, and then the 2 weeks that were like actually psychotic and like all planny, I'm telling you, better things would happen in this world. Like I guarantee you, if women actually were allowed to in the corporate world operate on a 30-day cycle and listen into your body versus against it, you would see so much different. And I bet you if somebody did a test of like when women had a marketing meeting in a corporate style when they were during their ovulation period, how many ideas actually worked versus when they tried to do it in like their menstrual period. Like the reality is if you did the study, it would show. And so I find it so interesting because I see all of these women fighting for something that I don't think they know what they quite are fighting for. And I want to, um, because like you said, it's such a beautiful thing that we have this. So we shouldn't fight against it. We should fight with it, like if that makes
Yeah.
sense. And I hope everyone watching, I know this is like a lot of jargon. But again, it's all about what resonates to you and what feels good for your body. So everyone is different. Like what works for me might not be what works for you, and that's okay, but it's about figuring that out. But the 30-day versus 24 is just it just is, you know?
Yeah. I think the word that would describe it best is synergy. Like
Yeah.
you can create synergy through your work and be passionate about it and be true, like very productive. Like since I have better understood my body and that masculine feminine balance, I am way more productive and I have no anxiety attacks anymore like I used to. I don't experience burnout. And when I'm getting to that point where I'm like, I know when I'm overstimulated, I know when I'm overwhelmed, I can have the boundaries and say, you know what, I don't have clients for this certain block of time in the afternoon and I only got 6 hours of sleep. Let me go lay down for a nap instead of hustle, push through, you can do it, don't be a wimp. You know, all the things that I had told myself in the past with so many different scenarios. I mean, it was always this self-talk of you have to do this, whether it's because like people are relying on you or just the way that hustle culture was so embedded into my brain from such an early age, just seeing it in my home. So it's
Yeah.
just crazy.
And we just have it's like a very black and white time right now where you can be productive, be successful, and what even is success? And I think that that's something I ask people when they're like, I want to be success. Like, what do you
Yeah.
mean? Like, what do you mean by that? Because that is a very broad term. But the truth of the matter is you can push and be successful and still honor your body. And the world's created a very black and white, like 9 to 5. If you rest at night, you're going to be rejuvenated. If you don't, then you're not. If you push harder, you're going to grow the ladder. Like all these very black and white things. And the truth is like, it's really in the in between the lines of what actually makes you successful more than the rigid schedule. It's in the flowiness, it's in the inner work.
What would 21-year-old Temima, who's just starting Next Up Talent, consider success versus her now?
That's such an interesting thing because I never really had a vision for it. Like I never really had like a because I'm just not a planner. I was just going through like kind of what felt good, but I definitely was more money oriented. And that's just because of my innate like instability of my like household situation.
Mhm.
Um, I think back then success was very related to being independent and to maybe what other people thought of me. And this is subconscious and maybe to what my business looked like and how people felt about it or how many people I was able to help. And now I would say my goal is still to help as many people as possible. But success to me is more defined by how I feel in the work I'm doing and am I feeling joy in every day versus am I feeling joy in every day and less about what other people are feeling about what I'm doing and more about how I'm feeling about what I'm doing. So
Yeah, I love that. And I know it's one thing to be on this podcast talking about business and being a go-getter and constantly doing that, but you said something in the beginning about there are people that maybe don't have that innate ambition that we kind of just had to have before we even reached our teenage years. What would be, on the flip side, some advice that you would have for maybe a woman who, let's say, is in a career that she does because she has to, doesn't find the passion in it, but at the same time doesn't know what she wants to do, is lacking that vision, in the sense that maybe that creativity isn't there, that passion, because she's so invested in just getting by in her current job.
what I would say to those listening who are in a corporate position that don't want to be in the position but like don't know what to do is ask yourself, and this is, I read a lot of Japanese books, and one of the ones that I read, one of the things they talk about is Japanese culture thrives on joy. And everything they do is based on joy. Like, do not have a single piece of item in your house that you don't touch and actually feel joy. Like, do you like it? Do you think about it? Do you pick it up? Like, if you don't, it doesn't serve a purpose for you. And so, what I always ask my clients, and I'm going to be doing a lot more coaching, but what I ask people is just what brings you joy? And don't think about it at all. Like, if I just ask you, like, what brings you joy? What's the first thing that comes to mind? And something I always do this, like I'll do a little journal prompt thing where I ask myself, like, what are the top memories that come to mind over the last 6 months? And I don't think about the memories. I'm just like, what comes to mind? Because you got to do more of those things. Because if it's just popping in
Yeah.
your head, it means that it, for whatever reason, resonated with you deeply. And so when you ask yourself, what brings you joy? And then what happens is a lot of people are like, okay, like I like playing video games or I like soccer or I like find a career around what brings you joy. So then ask yourself, are there any problems around what brings me joy? Maybe there's a problem I need to solve. Maybe it's not. Maybe I need to pivot into that area because guess what? everything that brings you joy has businesses attached to it. Every single thing. I don't care what you are liking or not liking. Every single thing, whether it's painting, and then you're like, oh, well, painting's not profitable, but who makes the paints? That is.
Hmm.
Who makes the arts? Like, and not to say you shouldn't do your passion toward, it depends on what your goals are in life and what your financial baseline is. And I'm not here to tell you what that is, but I'm here to tell you that there is a job in every single area that brings you joy that would make you forget that you're working. And I think that that's what so many people in America are missing.
Yep.
Um, and that's kind of the question that I ask people. And then most people who don't know what they want, it's because they feel they plan too much. They set this thing of I have to do this thing for the rest of my life. No, you got to do it for like however long you like it. Like give yourself a
Yeah,
period of
for
time.
sure.
Like, you know, if you plan your whole life out, guess what? It's not going to happen the way you planned it. So just stop planning it anyways. And I know that it's easier said than done, but the truth of the matter is you really have to just make a decision and stick with it. And a lot of us are paralyzed by too many ideas. So
Hmm.
just, and including myself at times, like I give advice, but I also don't take my own advice half the time. So, uh,
Fair.
but yeah, like the bigger thing is like you have to, understand when you have too many decisions to make and then, cut them back.
Definitely. And I think it has to do with our education system as well. We commit to a degree, one degree, that, okay, you're expected after you get out of college to find a job in that exact field that you went to college for, because guess what? You have a bunch of debt. A lot of people have a lot of school debt that it's like, now I'm more obligated to find a role in this specific thing to make all of that debt justified now. And that's what I feel like really starts that process too. And just it's a societal expectation, and then it's an expectation put on us by ourselves because we put ourselves in that position when, and I also think it's an identity thing. People identify so deeply with their job. Like that is the first thing that when you ask someone, I mean, go to any networking event or not, like, what do you do? That's what people always ask. And in America, we answer with our profession first. We take a lot of pride in that. And in other countries, it's like, what do you do? Oh, I play tennis. Oh, you
Yeah.
play tennis professionally? No, I just do it because I love it. Like, yeah, I work at a coffee shop down the street, but hey, the tennis or whatever hobby it is or whatever creative outlet it is, that's what really fuels the person. So that's what they're going to present first. And I wish we did that more. I wish our society wasn't as built on this identity around work and work being the most important thing. I think a lot of the time it comes to priorities being reevaluated. And for me, it was always like, I'm putting my career first. And then if I was in a relationship, then my relationship, then my friends, and then my family, and then maybe God, like down a number 5. And literally had to like completely flip that, do a 180 for me to experience what it was like to just find that joy in what I do and have that balance where, yes, cool, I'm a dietitian. Awesome. Like I love what I do, but it's not my entire life. And I find so much joy in just getting to spend time with my family, my friends, the communities that I'm a part of. It's a whole different world. It just opens things up so much.
Yeah. I mean I couldn't second that more. And we're in such a pivotal time where there's so much uncertainty and it's so easy for whoever's listening to accept things as they are. Like in America, you have to do X. And that's just not true because it's your life and you only get one of them. And if person next to you chooses to do something else, then I hope they're happy. But the truth is like you really only have this life to decide what you want it to look like. And That's a decision that you have to make. And if you change your mind, if you worked your way up a ladder and you decide this isn't the life I want, I encourage you to leave that life because you only have one life. And I've heard so many people, even my like clients' parents, who were like, yeah, well, I'm just kind of in it because I've done it for 40 years and like I don't like it. You still have maybe 40 years left of your life. What are you doing? That's a long time.
Yeah.
You look at the people who've lived the longest in their life. I just saw this thing on Instagram. It was like a 110-year-old knitting for penguins, like little shirts. I'm like, this is the cutest thing ever. And if that made him happy, then I'm so happy that he's knitting for penguins. You know what I mean? And the reality is like, you don't want to be on your deathbed thinking that you didn't live the life you wanted to live because you were comfortable.
Yeah. And then you help and inspire so many people along the way. So no matter what, if you're making it more for you and your unique gifts and talents and strengths, that is going to impact other people.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So pouring
absolutely.
into that, oh, I love it. I think you are a wonderful example of someone who's gone from survival mode to thrival mode. And I'm so glad that I just feel honored that I was the first podcast that you've done on this topic. And I can tell it is still very fresh. And I'm just so excited to continue seeing your journey. I know we'll keep in touch because, like, as you were talking about your childhood, I'm like, okay, so I'm not alone. This was not a completely unique experience for me. And it is nice to feel like there are people that understand the interesting dynamic of growing up in that type of environment and working so young and then trying to figure all that out as a young adult and
Yeah.
owning a business. It's a lot. So I just want to thank you so much for coming on. And if there's any final thoughts, is if there, oh, I think I like if we talked about one last thing. What's one thing that embodies, like when you think of thrival mode, where you're at now or where you feel like you're going, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Like living in thrival mode. What does that mean to you truly?
Honestly, joy is like really the only word that comes to mind. Being just intentional. So intentional joy kind of goes together for me and like just being intentional and joyful about everything I'm doing from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed. And this isn't 100% of the time, trust me, but it is the goal is to only do things and surround myself with people that make me feel joy. Um, and yeah, and help as many people as possible along the way.
Beautiful. Ah, okay, we are so aligned in that, and I'm so thankful for you and every every ounce of your story that has shaped you into the wonderful human being that you are. And we will be in touch. How do I close this out? I haven't done podcast is so long. How can people find you?
You can find me. Instagram is my first and last name. We can put it somewhere.
Cool.
And I also have a newsletter that I'm starting up. So I'm collecting emails now, and the first of next month will be when like it starts to actually roll out. But it'll be just tips and tricks and things that I've learned work for me. Again, I'm not somebody to tell you it's going to work for you, but I would love for you to try it and let me know how it goes. And I will be creating a website and doing some fun things, coaching upcoming soon.
Ah, oh, I'm so excited for you. You're gonna be an awesome coach.
Thank you.
Really
I
cool.
hope.
All right, bye, you guys. I'm gonna stop recording. See you later.